Okay, welcome along. So this is take number 247 because I've been trying to talk about British fighter aeroplanes without going off on tangents and just introducing you to the shape of the aeroplane and why it's designed that way. So I'm not going to talk about cockpit designs. I'm not going to talk about armaments. I'm going to try not to. I'm not going to talk about engine power and top speed and all that sort of stuff. I'm just going to talk about the shape. I'm going to talk about stability, and I'm going to talk about control. The reason for that is that's the topic that my current students are studying, and I wanted to make a quick 10-minute video just to get them into different aeroplane shapes, show them lots of different ones, and actually fly them around a bit and show them that. Okay, so we are going to skip World War II. Right, we're going to start with a Fury. Okay, this was designed at the end of World War One. Right, we had a biplane. Okay, it doesn't have any dihedral. It has relatively straight wings. Why? Because it was easier to make them that way. The bottom wings have a slight dihedral on them. That means they stick up a little bit. Right, you've still got bracing wires and struts. You've got standard elevators, and you've got ailerons only on the top section wing. Okay, I'm going to do this at the speed of light. You've got an open cockpit. Okay, again, I'm talking about the design of the wings mainly. Okay, and the control surfaces. So the Gladiator, okay, enclosed cockpit, slightly more powerful engine, little bit of dihedral on the top of the wing, right? And then it's got ailerons on both sets of wings, right? So both wing has an aileron. Remember the stability of this aircraft, technically because the top wing is bigger than the bottom wing, okay, and the fuselage is below the top wing, it's going to be a little bit like a Cessna Skyhawk in that it has like a pendulum effect with most of the weight of the aircraft being suspended under the wing. Okay, so that's going to give it all the lateral stability it needs. Why does it need lateral stability? Because the engines on these things are getting more powerful. Okay, so we need to have some sort of lateral stability so that when you adjust the throttle setting on the engine, it doesn't twist the aircraft and disturb it too much, and the aircraft will return to straight and level flight and roll itself back level without you having to fight it all the time. Standard elevators and a standard rudder on this. Quite a large rudder on the Fury because air combat in World War One was all about kicking the rudder left and right. Okay, as the aircraft get faster, that becomes less of an issue. Right, then we move to the Hurricane, one of my most favourite airplanes in the whole world. Okay, and we see the Hawker Hurricane there. It's got a little bit of dihedral on the wing. Okay, it needs that because it's got a big powerful Merlin engine in it. Okay, so you can see the dihedral a bit better there on that wing. Large, thick wing because you've got 8 machine guns in it. The other reason for dihedral, so we're going to fly the Hurricane. Tell you what, we'll fly a Hurricane and we'll do that one. Okay, so I'm very cautious of the time here. I'm trying to do a quick video. So the Hurricane and all of the World War II fighters that we're going to talk about, right up to the Vampire really, in 1946, have dihedral wings. The Hurricane's not very pronounced. The Spitfire would have been a better choice, but I'll just show you. So, why? Okay, let's show you. Okay, so we've got split flaps. We'll talk about flaps and drag devices in another video. Okay, because I want to make this quick about wing design mainly. So the Hurricane, you've got 8 machine guns, and if your aircraft is wobbling around like this in sort of turbulent air, especially if you're following another aircraft, remember, if we're trying to shoot down a Messerschmitt and we're right behind it, yeah, what we don't want is the turbulence of the Messerschmitt upsetting the aircraft, partially because of that, but mainly you've got wind and you've got different air pressures and you don't want it wobbling around like that. So if you've got a dihedral wing, it's got what you call a stable gun platform, because the guns, as you see, I'm going to fire them over the land so you can see the tracers a bit better. See that? Right, the guns are designed to cross at that crosshair point. Okay, so if your aircraft's wobbling around a bit, those bullets are going to go everywhere. So you need the rounds to be on target. So that's why one of the reasons, as well as the high torque of the piston engine, why you needed dihedral on piston engine World War II aircraft. Alright, let's look at turn rate. Okay, so if we pick that base over there, that red dot there, and we go into a turn rate, here we go into a turn, rolling into turn, oh, died a bit there, sorry, it's the way I've got the controls set up. And we're 180 degrees back there in a couple of seconds, right, so it's got quite a good turn rate. The Hurricane could outturn the Spitfire, and luckily for us could outturn the ME-109 Messerschmitt, so that's why the Hurricane was, well, in my view, the most important fighter in World War II and the world, because it won the Battle of Britain. Okay, and the brave men that flew the Hurricane. Okay, brave women as well that transport the Hurricane to the battle zones. Right, okay, this is about wing design, not a history lesson. So, the thing you'll notice with dihedral and with even with a high mounted fuselage and a low mounted wing, the roll rate on World War II fighters, the Hurricane, is not outstanding. It will roll, it'll roll quick enough, but it doesn't roll really quickly. Okay, other aircraft we'll see later on will. Right, standard aileron, standard rudder, all the way through World War II. Control surfaces didn't change that much. Okay, they got bigger. If we look at the last kind, so if we look at the Spitfire, so the Spitfire very similar to Hurricane, more dihedral on it, yeah, more powerful engine. Okay, two 20mm cannons and four machine guns. So it needs that dihedral. If you notice, the cockpit's changed a bit to give it a bit more of a bubble canopy, more visibility compared to the Hurricane. Again, I'm off the point with wing design. Right, the wing design then went with elliptical wings, and this cuts down on on induced drag. So because the elliptical shape of the wing, at the wingtip, when the high pressure air tries to leak round and act on the top surface of the low pressure air, causing vortexes or vortices, you only give it a little bit of wing. That little wingtip is the only place the vortex can live. This is Steve's easy version. It's lots more complicated than that, but basically the high pressure air underneath the wing is trying to get around the wingtip and change and basically leak around the wingtip and change the direction of the low pressure air over the top of the wing, and it causes a spinning vortex of air. And if you make the wingtip very thin, pointy, it makes that vortex smaller and weaker. They do that on modern day airliners with the use of winglets. Okay, so they change the direction of the wing, make the wing stick up a bit, and then they make that vortex smaller and weaker. You see, the Spitfire also has a very narrow kind of elliptical fuselage there. Okay, and that helps with what we call keel effect. So if the aircraft side slips because the fuselage is sticking up, and there's a large side area on the fuselage, it will turn the aircraft back into level flight. Okay, Spitfire was then succeeded. It was developed through you can see the change of the fuselage isn't much. It's got a longer nose on it for a bigger, more powerful Griffin engine. It's then got a lot more powerful engine with 5 blades on the propeller to push more air back, which makes it accelerate faster. It didn't actually change the top speed that much. Well, it did. The Griffin was more powerful, but mainly the 5-bladed propeller and moving more air back changed the acceleration characteristics of the aircraft, which made it a slightly better dogfighter. Okay, you then go for the later model, the Typhoon, which was designed primarily with a multi-role like air-to-air and ground attack. So it's got a very thick wing, okay, and longer range. It needed to hold more fuel, okay, and a more powerful engine. And toward the end of the war, you end up with the Typhoon was developed into the Tempest, which is even bigger and heavier, more powerfully armed, faster, and we're up to 425 knots. Okay, the Tempest also tried it with a radial engine, which actually produces more drag, but it's more powerful. And the Focke-Wulf 190 was very successful at that point in the war, so they tried the Tempest was also fit with a radial engine. And I'll just put an X-ray to see what I mean by radial. I mean all the cylinders go round the engine rather than in a line. So I think the Napier on the Tempest was a V24 or something. Yeah, 24 cylinders in a V shape and 12 cylinders on the Griffin. Yeah. So yeah, so more cylinders, more power. Yeah, not getting hooked up on engines. I'm trying to do a quick video. Right. So then someone invented the jet engine. Frank Whittle, Sir Frank Whittle, bona fide British genius, invented the jet or the gas turbine engine, and straight away we're up to 429 knots. So you're not that much faster than than the piston engine aircraft, but it can go up to 41,000 feet. Okay, and it was faster at higher altitudes. At 41,000 feet, your piston engines were, let's see how far. Yeah, so max altitude 36,000 feet. So 5,000 feet higher than that, your piston engines are running out of air to move backwards, and your jet does that more effectively. Okay, not that the Meteor operated at 41,000 feet, but you know, it was getting up there. Right, let's crack on with wing design and things. So let's fly the Meteor. Okay, you'll notice with the wing design on the Meteor, we've still got dihedral wings. Okay, we're at 400 and something knots. We are in straight level flight, we are nowhere near the sound barrier yet. But we're having to think about the sound barrier from a design consideration. And you'll notice the position of the horizontal stabilizer. Okay, so split flaps again. Yeah, still split flaps. 80 knots, takes off 80 knots, no problem. Yeah, we'll retract those flaps. We'll get the undercarriage up. Okay, and then we'll do a side view and look where that horizontal stabilizer is. It's high up. Why is it high up? Okay, it's high up to stay away from the turbulent air. When you go faster, you get speed-induced separation of the air at the trailing edge of the wing. You're wanting the air to curve along the top of the wing, and it's wanting to go in a straight line. So what you find is at certain speeds, it will start to rip away and form turbulent air at the trailing edge. And this causes problems because what's at the trailing edge? Your ailerons. Okay, so as you go faster, you have to worry about flow separation, induced loss of control, right? And the thing, if it happens on the wing, it's going to happen on the tail plane as well and on the fin. So you have to think about that with your control surfaces. For now, we're doing 450 knots. Well, we're doing 300 knots at the minute in the Meteor. The Meteor again was designed in World War II. It went into service in 1943. So look what it does really well, right? It's got a bubble canopy. You can see it has to have frames at the front of it because that's what the technology was at the time. But you can see behind you quite well. They've got rid of all the canopy frames that the Hawker Hurricane had. Visibility was important because the only armament it had was 4 cannons in the front. You haven't developed missiles or radar yet. So that's my phone going. You haven't developed missiles or radar yet. Well, radar exists, but not fitted to aircraft as the norm. Right. So you need to be able to see your enemy, engage with the enemy, and take it on with cannons. Okay, but it rolls quite slowly. It's got a dihedral wing still, right? Because we still need a stable gun platform. Okay, we still need that stable gun platform. That was the design thinking at the time. Okay, but it does have massive ailerons. So it needs massive ailerons because it's got quite heavy engines on the wings, and they're going to stop it rolling quickly. Okay, if you try and waggle your arms up and down and roll your arms with 2 heavy bags, and then you'll see that, so we need quite large ailerons to roll the aircraft. Okay, once it rolls into a turn though, it's got quite a big wing area, so it will turn quite effectively. This was meant to be a dogfighter. Okay, so it does turn pretty well. Yeah, not many things out turn a Meteor. Right, and massive elevators to hold it into the turn as well, or to get it into that turn. Yeah, T-tail, or nearly a T-tail, to keep the tail out of the way of that turbulent air when you start going really fast. Right. Okay. Now I'm going to try and go at quick fire mode because I'm trying to keep this down to a 20-minute video, and I'm not doing well at keeping the waffle down. Okay, so after the Meteor, 1946, just after the war ended, so at the enter service of the de Havilland Vampire, excellent design, single engine, right? So they moved, instead of 2 engines, 1 engine, which means it rolls a lot faster. Okay, we'll see that happen now. It's still got dihedral wings. Why has it still got dihedral wings? Because it's got 4 cannon in the nose, no missiles. It's still a gunfighter. It's still a dogfighter. It's still not got swept back wings. This is at the end. This was designed during the war. Maneuverability and being able to turn in a dogfight was still more important than top speed. Okay, so see, the early jet engines took a while to accelerate. We're at 60-70 knots there. We'll try and put it in the air now. Right, it's got that boom tail. Okay, which was pioneered by the Lockheed P-38 Lightning, which is a very effective dogfighter in the Pacific area of the Second World War. So it turns pretty well. See, it's going to turn really tightly now. And get that thing to turn. 1 elevator at the back of that boom tail. Yeah, and because the engine's in the middle, it rolls slightly faster than the Meteor. Okay, but it's still not. It doesn't roll really quickly. okay, but it's a slight improvement on the Meteor, and it's a lighter aircraft with a single engine, and it's pretty much as I think it's slightly faster than the Meteor, so yes, it is an improvement. They did improve the Meteor at the same time. Again, with your cockpit, you can see behind you, it's still got that bubble cockpit sort of thing going on. A few more bars at the front, but it's still got quite good visibility. Right. But no swept back wing, still got a straight wing. It's got a swept back leading edge, so technically it has got a swept back wing, but not truly swept back. Okay, the Me-262, the Germans, they developed the swept back wing. I'll quickly show you one of them so you know what we're talking about. So this was the German fighter, the German jet fighter at the start of the end of the war. There we go. Okay, so you can see if we look down on that one, I'm not going to bother flying that. That's got a slightly swept back wing, okay, and it's got podded engines underneath it, okay, and the tail quite high up. Now the design of that, now they kept the cockpit in the middle because that's where you put cockpits in 1940. Okay, there's no reason why the Germans couldn't have put the cockpit down the front, but they just decided not to. The first American jet fighter aircraft had the cockpit up there as well, which give it less visibility down below it and stuff like that, loads of things, but never mind. Right. Okay, so if we move away from the Messerschmitt and we go back to the British tree, we'll see we have back to the Vampire. After the Vampire 1946, the Vampire came into the 1950s, 1951, came into service I think in 1954. You had the Supermarine had built the Spitfire. They then built a thing called the Swift. This is the Mark 7 Swift, okay, and you can see the advent of the first ever kind of very, very early air-to-air missiles on the wings. More importantly than that, if we look at the wing on it, the early Swift and the contemporary, the other aircraft, the Hawker, so Supermarine built the Spitfire and then the Swift, Hawker built the Hurricane, and then they built, after a long time after, they built other aircraft like the Typhoon and the Tempest, and then they built the Hunter, okay. Now the early Swift had in fact I'll show you an early Swift that's worth looking at. The early Supermarine Swift, when I find it, you see there's loads of airplanes I'm missing out here. Right, okay, I'll tell you what, we'll fly it because that's probably easier. So the early Swift had a highly swept back wing, and it needed little tiny wing fences on that wing, okay. Now the early, and you see the angle of the wing is the same all the way along, right, so the sweep angle doesn't change. And the early Swifts, again, split flaps, standard flaps, split flaps, standard elevators, okay, and standard, and standard ailerons. Quite big ailerons, very, very good roll rate, right. You'll notice the dihedral's gone, okay. So even though it's still cannon armed, it's still only got machine guns or cannons as its armament, right? But it's lost its dihedral. Why has it lost its dihedral? Because when you go faster and you start getting to approach the sound barrier, if you get in a thing called Dutch roll, which is the aircraft kind of try to roll, yaw and pitch all at the same time. I can't really simulate it very well on here, but it's kind of this sort of motion and the airplane doing it on its own, right? If you get into a Dutch roll at high speed, it causes problems. Dihedral aircraft are prone to Dutch roll. Even modern airliners, they have things called automatic yaw dampers to stop Dutch roll happening. If you've got a fast fighter aircraft, the best way to stop it happening isn't relying on a yaw damper, because it probably wouldn't react quick enough, okay. If you're in a manoeuvre, what you do is you give it a little bit of anhedral on the wing, and that stops the Dutch roll from happening. I'll explain more why that happens in class when I've got more time. Okay, so that's a Supermarine Swift, 1950s jet fighter, okay, single engine Avon turbojet engine. The Avon engine was also used in the Hunter and the Lightning that we're going to see later on. And you can see the Swift has wing fences, and that's what's actually got vortilons at the front, which a wing fence that extends round the front of the wing is called a vortilon, technically. Okay, right. Still got subsonic intakes. It's still a subsonic fighter. It can't go supersonic, but it can go close to the sound barrier. We're doing 560 miles an hour there, Mach 0.87, so 87% of the sound barrier without even trying. So it's still a pretty fast aeroplane, right? And it needs to have supersonic design features. Okay, so we'll talk about supersonic design features in another video. But swept back wings, wing fences, and the wing fences are in front of the ailerons, and they do the job of making the stall more predictable, preventing a tip stall. Okay, the Americans found out when they designed the F100 Super Sabre that it was prone to a thing called the Sabre dance. So highly swept back wings need to have wing fences or other design features to stop them stalling and stalling nose up in an unrecoverable nose up stall, which is the slang term for it is the Sabre dance. Okay, the other way to get around that, so you see that the later models of Swift, instead of having a wing fence, they had what you call a sawtooth or a dogtooth leading edge. So the sawtooth leading edge, and they changed the angle of the wing. So the Vulcan, Concorde, loads of other aircraft have this, they just change the angle of the wing slightly, and it makes the stall more predictable. It makes the wing stall root first, not tip first, which is important. Okay, so you've got a sawtooth leading edge and that. The early model Hunter, the very first model Hunter, had a very straight leading edge, swept leading edge like that, all one angle. That suffered from the same problem. It had no wing fences. And the later model Hunters, as you can see here, the Hunter F6, which is the later model Hunters, that had a sawtooth leading edge. It needed that, and that was in front of where the ailerons were, so that if the aircraft did stall, you can just see it. You see a bit better there. See a bit better there. There you go. You can see it there. Okay, and we'll also see that later on the Phantom. Okay, so our speeds now have gone 593 miles an hour from the Hunter. Even though the Hunter was less powerful than the Swift, the later model Swifts had afterburners. Okay, the Hunter was less. I'm up to 20 minutes on the video now. I'm going to talk a bit faster. So the later model Swifts had afterburners and more powerful engines, but they were slightly slower, than the Hunters. Okay, that little data on there, that 479, sorry, on the Swift. The minus 1.6 knots is because I've got missiles fitted to the wings, which is going to that's how much it decreases the turn time and the climb rate and the top speed, because it creates more drag. Okay, so Hunter slightly faster, even though it's less powerful. Why? Because it is slippier. Okay, it has better design features. It's got more area ruling on the fuselage. More on that on a different video. Right, less drag. Okay, even the fact that it's silver and polished is going to take it down from the fact that the Swift was camouflaged. But that's another story again for another video. So we're in the 1950s. We're moving from aircraft that are designed to be dogfighters to aircraft that are designed to be fast. So the visibility, it's still got a bubble canopy, but the visibility is going away a little bit. If you look at the Hunter, rearward visibility wasn't as much of an issue. It's go fast, intercept the enemy and destroy them with your cannons. Missiles were coming. At the same time, 1956, we get the Javelin. Okay, now the Javelin is still subsonic. It still doesn't break. It can break the sound barrier in a dive, but in level flight, it's not a truly supersonic aircraft. It does not have a pure delta wing. Okay, so it has what you would know as delta wing. If you look at it, it looks like a mini Vulcan. Okay, but it doesn't have a delta wing because it still needs a horizontal stabilizer. Okay, so it's still got a horizontal stabilizer. Let's fly it and see what it does. Okay, it was a little bit underpowered. The Sapphire engines that were fitted to the Javelin, if it had Avons, it would have been slightly faster. But the Sapphires were fitted with afterburners. Okay, it could stay up for quite a long time. It did have quite the fuel was in the wing, quite a large wing area. And the impressive thing was the Javelin could take off and it could climb really fast. So 100 knots, it could accelerate fast. So we'll put it in the climb there, get the undercarriage up there, and we'll see that if we look what's the altitude, 300 feet already, right? But it had a decent climb rate on the Javelin. As well as that, if the Javelin needed to turn, because it's got anhedral and it's got quite big ailerons, okay, it can roll pretty well. Okay, and because it's got a large wing area, it can also it can turn. Okay, so it has a decent turn rate. So the Javelin wasn't a bad fighter. Okay, but at the time the thinking was it was all about top speed. And unfortunately for the Javelin, for its longevity, at the same time, this thing could nearly reach Mach 1, okay, but not go fully supersonic, whereas the Hunter could reach Mach 1 as well, nearly, right, just barely transonic but not quite supersonic. The Russians had a bomber called the T-22 Blinder that could do Mach 1.2. Now the reason we needed a faster aeroplane, we think, okay, well, can it not shoot down, it's got heat-seeking missiles. The heat-seeking missiles at the time, you see that MiG's 5 miles away, will not lock on unless the enemy is going away from it. It will only lock on to a big massive afterburner or a hot jet exhaust, okay? The radar can see them, radar can lock on, but the heat seekers won't lock on until it gets to about 2 miles behind it. And then even if the bomber goes into a little bit of a turn like that, the heat seeker might lose lock and miss. So it's got 4 missiles on the wings there. So what do we need? Why am I going about weapons and stalling on that a little bit? Because we need a faster aeroplane to intercept the 222. So in the 50s, in the middle, the start of the Cold War, we start to get into a race for speed. Speed becomes important. Look, you've also got a heavier fighter. It's got 2 engines and it's got a radar operator in the back to ease the pilot's workload, because the radar needed somebody to operate it. Okay. You notice the interesting thing, those little things on the wings there, they're called vortex generators, okay? They are in front of they do 2 things. One of the reasons is that they're in front of the control surfaces. So when we get that separated flow close to Mach 1, we're doing Mach 0.82 at the minute, and we start getting the separated flow over the trailing edge when we go faster, the vortex generators will create a vortex. So instead of non-laminar flow, you get vortex flow over the ailerons, and you maintain aileron control at high speed. Yeah, you notice the ailerons still giving it control even though we're doing nearly Mach 0.9. Okay, without the vortex generators, you'd move the ailerons and they would be in turbulent flow and you wouldn't get any control. Okay, now the other thing is we get the first prototype kind of stabilator here. So the whole flying control surface on the tail is moving up and down together, and if you notice, the main control surface there, yeah, is moving in an opposite direction to the elevators, the little tiny elevators at the back. The Buccaneer does a similar thing. So tell you more about that weird kind of thing when I talk about it in class. Okay, let's move on. So we are nearly supersonic. The Russians have got a very, very fast bomber. We need a fast fighter. Okay, we are 28 minutes in, so I'm now going to go really quickly through the lightning. Okay, because if I don't catch myself, I'll talk about lightning all night. Right, so here we go. Right, so we're now hitting the 1960s. So the 50s are over. Everything's gone supersonic. It's all about speed. Visibility from the cockpit's not an issue. Right, it's just look forward, use the radar, and use the missiles to take out the target. Right, 1960, Vietnam's kicking off. Okay, so the Cold War's been fought by proxy in Southeast Asia, but this aircraft was designed before Vietnam. Okay, and when we track in the couch, you see it is all about speed. We're doing 300 miles an hour already. Okay, if we leave it in this, even in a slight climb, the aircraft with the afterburners lit, we'll put it in about a 45-degree climb. About that. Like the burners, it'll probably go supersonic in a 45-degree climb. Contrary to the myth, the Lightning won't go supersonic in a vertical climb. But yeah, there we go. So it's designed to get up high and intercept Russian bombers, and it needs to chase them. It's still got heat-seeking missiles. It needs to be behind the bombers in order to chase them. Okay, it can't attack them head on, but it does. We have it's supersonic already in the Lightning. Yeah, phenomenal, really fast aeroplane. Okay, let's look at the design features before I start talking about anything else. So it's got standard flaps. If I just slow it down a bit there, you can see what flaps block the high speed. So the Lightning does turn quite well. If we just, I'll tell you what, we'll leave the flaps up for now. So if we slow the Lightning down a bit, it's got a big wing area. It will turn, right? It rolls really, really well. If we look at if we go a bit faster and we get into a standard roll, and we just roll the aircraft, yeah, you see the Lightning's got an excellent roll rate. Okay, the Tornado rolls a bit faster, but the Lightning can still roll really well. Okay, directional stability it needs, because it's got a lot of thrust out the back end. Try to push the aircraft forward. If it goes out of line, yeah, you can see they're struggling with stability a little bit. So what it needs is quite a large fin and two ventral strakes just sticking at the bottom of that belly there. You can see the two ventral strakes there to give it a bit of extra directional stability. Now we've got a new design feature moving on from the Javelin. Okay, standard ailerons. Okay, why does it not lose aileron control at high speed? Because if you look very close onto the wing, you see there's a little notch in that wing. Okay, so that notch is going to create a little vortex. Okay, and that vortex is going to go over the ailerons, and as well as that, the shock wave when we go supersonic, I'll just go supersonic again, I'll slow it down, right, the shock wave is not going to cover the ailerons because the ailerons are at a different angle to the trailing edge of the wing. Okay, so the shock wave will follow the kind of angle of the wing, so we'll go supersonic and we'll get the shock going just for a split second. Okay, I don't know if you can see it that well from this view. There you go. It doesn't really model the shockwave that well on both, and that shows you on there, but shockwave would follow. You see the lines drawn on the wing, the shockwave would kind of follow that line, and it wouldn't cover the whole aileron at the same time. Right, anyway, so we've got standard ailerons, really good roll rate, reasonable turn rate. Okay, so there we're doing Mach 1. If we put it into a turn, we're pulling 13G. The pilot's going to pass out very shortly. Okay, so we'd have to slow down to turn. But then this is an interceptor, not a dogfighter. Now if we look at what's happening with the tail, the whole tail is moving together. So there's no elevators, the whole tail moves up and down. The front end, when we go to pitch up, the front end of the tail moves down, the back end moves up. Okay, and that's called an all-flying tail or a stabulator. Okay, right, all-flying tail, and that's if both tail surfaces are in one piece, or one piece all-flying tail. More about that when we do supersonic flight. Okay, right. It's mainly to do with maintaining control through the sound barrier, but also gives it good manoeuvrability, right? And let's go with that. Right, okay. So I wasn't going to spend too long on the lightning. Half an hour in, yeah. So, no history lesson here, just about the designs of the Phantom. We moved on to the Phantom, an American designed aircraft, so in a list of British aircraft it's there because it was the next one in line after the Royal Air Force. The thing missing from a British fighter plane is the Hawk was used for air defence and the Sea Harrier was used for air defence, but we're going to skip through them a little bit so we can get through the main fighter types. So we end up with the Phantom. It's got dihedral wings. Okay, so we said that dihedral was a problem with Dutch roll, but it's got an anhedral tail. Why doesn't the Phantom Dutch roll? Right, because it's got a little bit of an anhedral, well, it's got a straight wing and a bit just dihedral wing tips. Okay, so it is actually prone to Dutch roll, the Phantom, but it gets around that with other design features. Okay, it's got the sawtooth leading edge, right? So when the wing changes angle, it's got the sawtooth leading edge when you put the dihedral bit on, which maintains a vortex over the ailerons. Let's fly it and see its control configuration. It's supersonic, so it's got a stabulator, right? The anhedral on the stabulator is to make sure that when the stabulator moves up and down, it is at no point. You could have put a T-tail on it. It has that little kind of like T-tail going on there, that little stabulator thing. It's the little T bit, which is actually, I think it's an aerial actually, halfway up the tail, the vertical stabilizer. Right, let's take off. Okay, two big afterburning spare turbofans, J79 on the American Phantom. It's got leading edge slats that at low speed will pop out the front of the wing and make the wing more curved. Okay, it's also got, for roll control, this is what I want to show you, so it's got an all moving stabulator. It hasn't got a tailor on yet, that doesn't come in until we see the Jaguar and the Tornado. Right, but it's all moving stabulator, and at all angles of attack, because of the anhedral downward sloping tail, it doesn't matter what angle of attack it is. I'll put it at a high angle of attack now and I'll just leave it like so it's nearly going to stall. We'll have the air brakes out and the wheels out and the flaps and everything. Right, so we're just going to slow the airplane down. So at a high angle of attack, the radar's in the way there. The turbulent air off the back of the wing will not strike all of the tail at the same angle. Yeah, and it's actually got like an upside down slat on the leading edge of the tail that you probably can't see from any views I can get there. You might there, you just see it there. The front edge of the stabulator just points up slightly. You'd have to see a real airplane do that. So at high angle of attack, that's the aircraft stalled. You can see the slats out the front of the surface of both the wing. trying to make that aircraft, that wing very curved, and how big the flaps are. I'll just put the air brakes in. So there's huge flaps on the Phantom to slow it down because it was designed to land on carriers. But if we fly it nose up there like that, you can see that if we look head on, that when we see the turbulence off the wing would not strike the tail all at the same point. There'd always be a little bit of stabilator poking out into clean air. Okay, that's the idea behind the anhedral on the tail. Enough about that. We'll stick the flaps up, stick the undercarriage up, stick the afterburners on, get a bit of speed up. Right. So how does it roll? Its ailerons only move down over, but the other side, if I roll left, it has what you call a differential spoiler. So there's a little spoiler will pop out. See that little spoiler pop out there? The little spoiler pops out the downgoing wing, and the upgoing wing, the aileron just goes down, and that gives it a tremendous roll rate. Okay, but mainly because look at the size of that aileron. Big huge aileron goes down, right, and the spoiler dumps the lift on the opposing wing. The Tornado's going to roll slightly differently, but it still has differential spoilers. Okay, right. Not going to talk anymore about the Phantom, about its weapons and things like that. It was designed as an interceptor, so rearward visibility's gone, and we've got radar guided missiles now. But if I get talking about that, I'll be there all night. So we've talked about the main aerodynamic features of the aircraft. Dihedral wings, but still excellent roll rate. Why? Because it's got big ailerons to cope with it. Okay, and yeah, quite a big massive fin, which helps it combat the Dutch roll. The other thing it helps it combat the Dutch roll is the stabilizer, but that's a bit more complicated how it does that. Right, okay. So, the Phantom was a stopgap. We needed an interceptor. They were looking at designing a supersonic Harrier. That never came off. A Labour government came in and cut defence spending with a thing called the White Paper Project. The Lightning barely survived that. Okay, they were going to cancel the Lightning at one point. They were going to buy the American F-111, and they ended up buying the Phantom instead because the F-111 was over budget and taking too long to design and wasn't as good as the company said it was going to be. So basically, the F-111 became a bomber instead of an interceptor. And curiously enough, the next fighter that the RAF had was the Tornado F3, which started off life as a bomber. Right, now, when we look at wing design, we can see that the Phantom turns really well because it has a big massive wing. It was designed to be a fighter. Wing area is important, right? But wing areas on bombers, if you look at the Tornado, it's got a long thin wing. Why has it got that? Reason for that, hold on, I'm ticking on for 40 minutes now. Okay, so we'll just talk about the design features of the wing and nothing else. Okay, so the Tornado has a variable geometry wing. What it wants to do is, yeah, see now that it's got big, massive, huge stabilators, other than the fact that they are not. Okay, when we take off, I'll show you that. So a really quick takeoff. The Tornado was designed in the cockpit view, right? Very poor rearward visibility. Let's make sure I don't crash here. The Tornado was designed to operate at this sort of height, 100 feet, 50 feet above, just above the trees. Okay, and to go into enemy territory, to fly low below the radar. The ground attack versions have terrain following radar. Okay, and the Tornado was designed to operate at this level, not to be a high altitude interceptor. So rearward visibility is not great. Okay, it's not terrible, but it's not great. Right, it's not a dogfighter. It doesn't turn that well. Right, it rolls very well. Okay, but if we want to slow down and go into a dogfighting sort of turn, so I'll just cut the engines there and try and turn very tightly. Okay, yeah, it can turn as well as a Phantom, if not slightly better than a Phantom, with its wings swung forward. Okay, to create more lift. Right, more lift, but also more drag. Okay, so it can swing its wings forward, create more drag, more lift, and it can turn and take off and land on a shorter runway. That's the important bit. It's got those huge, what we call ailerons. So when the aircraft rolls, it's got differential spoilers, right? So the differential spoilers poke out of the downgoing wing to dump lift on that wing, but it doesn't have any ailerons. Okay, that's because on a swing wing, you haven't. It's complicated to put aileron controls in a swing wing. Okay, so it doesn't have any ailerons. What's got is a big, massive taileron. So if you notice the tail, one goes up and one goes down. Yeah, and that gives it a phenomenal, even with its wings swept forward, a phenomenal roll rate on the Tornado, so it gets itself out of trouble, it can roll really quickly, makes it quite manoeuvrable that way. Okay, turning performance, it could do with more wing area to turn better. The F-15 and the F-16 and the MiG-29 can all easily outturn the Tornado because they have bigger wing areas. Okay. Why does it have a small wing area? Because it was originally designed to operate at low altitude. If you have a large wing area, it's more prone to buffeting, and the actual structure of the wing gets shook to bits because, you know, the turbulent air at low altitude, the very non-smooth air, the bumpy air at low altitude doesn't show you on War Thunder here, but trust me, that would shake the wing to bits if the Tornado had a big wing area. So the Tornado, the B-1 Lancer, the F-111 were all designed to operate at low altitude. The MiG-29 to some extent, sorry, the MiG-23 to some extent, anything swing wing has a very thin wing. Okay, so once the wings are swept back all the way like that, a lot less drag. Okay, and that also gives it more directional stability, right? Because swing wings, very highly swept wings, make the aircraft very directionally stable. The reason the Tornado needs a big massive fin is when you swing the wings forward, so I'll just pop the air brakes out there, yeah, you lose a bit of that directional stability and it will be a bit more twitchy like that, so it needs a big fin to compensate for that. All variable geometry swing wing aircraft have quite large fin areas. Okay, so we'll pop those air brakes back in. Okay, and just talking about wing designs, remember the Tornado has anhedral wings. Okay, it also has a high mounted wing. Remember the Phantom had a low mounted wing. Because the wing's low mounted, that's why it's able to roll quite effectively, because the weight of the aircraft is above the wing. So that, I was going to say why the Phantom gets away with dihedral but still has a good roll rate, is because it has a low mounted wing. Okay, if you notice, the Hunter and the Lightning had a mid mounted wing. Now the Tornado actually, right, has a high mounted wing, okay, but because it has anhedral and big massive ailerons, it doesn't affect the roll rate that much. Okay, but because it's got a high mounted wing, it does give it a bit of stability. Okay, so the Tornado, the F-15, the MiG-25, lots of aircraft of the same generation had high mounted wings, because again they were primarily designed to be interceptors, so stability and being able to roll massively tight and all that wasn't that much of an issue. Right, anyway, last on the list then, right, 43 minutes, we'll keep it like a 43-minute one, that's as quick as I can go. Right, so we end up with eventually, again, we go from interceptors, we realise that interception isn't everything, okay, and we end up with needing a dogfighter again. So bubble canopies and all-round visibility are back, okay, and large wing areas and a dedicated fighter aircraft, okay. So the Typhoon was designed from the ground up to be able to dogfight, okay. The 1970s, the 1960s and 70s, they're all missile-armed fighters. It's all going to be firing missiles beyond visual range, and then people realise that it's not as easy as that. Again, it's not a history lesson. Trust me, we'll talk about that in other lessons. But basically, dogfighters were required again. Dogfighting came back in. Okay. Weirdly enough, the original Eurofighter was going to be designed with the Air Force with a cannon installed but not used. Right, and then people decided that, hang on, you know, the lessons learned in Vietnam, where the Americans took all the cannons off the aircraft and said they're just going to use missiles. We are going to need a cannon, so the Eurofighter has a, if we go back to up at the wing root there, still has a 27mm Mauser cannon. Okay, right. So, back to all-round visibility. Yeah, good all-round visibility, we're back to that. Okay, let's look at the wing design on the aircraft. Delta wing with a canard foreplane, or a foreplane or a canard, depending whether you're French or not. Okay, most people just call them canards. Okay, if you look at that, the other thing, the design feature on the aircraft is we're in a slight climb, we're at 10,000 feet. I haven't lit the afterburners for a while, and we've gone supersonic by accident. Okay, the Typhoon is a very, very slippy aeroplane, very, very low drag, so it does not need an afterburner to go supersonic. You can cruise at supersonic speeds without an afterburner. Still got a rudder, still need a rudder on the aircraft. Okay, The control system on the airplane, then we've got a delta wing. The angle of the delta wing, look, no sawtooths, no funky things on the leading edges, right, to control any vortexes and all that. What we have is the canards, the fly-by-wire computer system will adjust the canards to adjust the airflow over the main wing so it stalls in a nice predictable fashion and can fly at a high angle of attack without stalling. When we look at the roll rate, okay, it doesn't roll quite as fast as a Tornado, but it rolls more than fast enough for what it needs to do. Okay, how does it roll? It's got flaperons. Okay, so instead of ailerons or elevons, right, it's got the control surface on the back of the wing. They just perform whatever function the pilot needs. So if the pilot needs to slow down, so we're going to put the gear down, put the big air brake out to slow the aircraft down. One of the drawbacks of the Typhoon is it's quite hard to slow down. So what we're going to use is we use that big wing. We're going to pitch up and put it at a high angle of attack. See a little bit of cloud on the wing there. Yeah. So we're going to pitch the aircraft up and we're going to slow it down. Okay. And you'll see when it goes a bit slower, the slats start to come out the front of the wing. See the full length slats on the front of the wing, and all of the ailerons now go down to become a dedicated set of flaps. Okay, once we get down to about 96 knots, you'll see there's the flaps coming down. Put the air brake in. Yeah, and you can see that the flaps have come down to form to make the wing more curved. Okay, yeah. Now, last thing on it then, so we'll put the undercarriage up and we'll put the flaps up and put the slats in. You find the canards, what they do is they only control pitch. Okay, they have a trimming function as well in roll, but they only really control pitch. And you see what happens to them is, initially if I want to pitch up, the canards will point up over. So the initial thing is they will pitch up. Okay, and when I want to pitch down, the canards will pitch down. But you notice if I continue to pitch up, the canards actually start to point down a bit, and the reason for that is it's that so it keeps the airflow over the main wing from stalling, so you can actually fly at a high angle of attack. So the canards will initially chuck you into a turn. So if you want to roll and turn, yeah, you can see them there. See the canards there are actually adjusting so they don't stall. Okay, so the wing puts its slats out in a turn. It turns as tightly as it can. And let's look at the turning performance for a big heavy fighter like a Typhoon, big twin engine Mach 2 capable fighter. Let's look how quickly it can turn. Okay, so you can see there, yeah. So I'll just move a bit better there. So quickly into the turn. I want to meet the horizon and spin around quite quickly. Okay, if you just put a steady turn there, without pulling too many G's and without knocking the pilot out. We're maintaining 200 knots, slowing the aircraft down. Yeah. Can't you tell over the sea how quickly you turn, but there you go, you turn quite fast. Go for that sort of view, that's a bit better, isn't it? Right, so I can outturn a Tornado, I can outturn an F-16, I can outturn almost anything. Yeah. Okay, right. Thanks for watching. So I was going to try and keep it to below sort of 20 minutes, and I've still gone on for 49 minutes. I haven't talked about lots of things I wanted to talk about, but there's the design features on the aircraft, and that's why they're designed in that shape. I hope you enjoyed watching that, and I'll see you later on in the next video. Bye.